Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us today. This is a webinar about fundraising climate change, which is a term that I coined quite a number of years ago when I first got into this fundraising space. I was originally a marketer running a marketing agency for private sector companies, and I got mad at my favorite charity because they were spamming me too much and doing things that really ticked me off. So I ended up coming up with a marketing scheme, if you will, to help them generate more major gifts and legacy gifts. And it worked so well that we ended up changing the company, and now we build software to support it. We've got hundreds of customers around the world and growing quite nicely. Thank you. And I see a lot of our customers are actually on this presentation. So like I said, we're going to be covering quite a bit today. Going to be going through a lot of data for probably about the first 2/3 of this to talk about what is fundraising climate change. And then because that's kind of a bleak discussion, it's a little depressing, frankly, I'm going to get into 3 strategies that you can use to find success even in this era. All right. So let's take it away. Let's take it away and start talking about the ever-shrinking donor base. So a lot of people are noticing that there are fewer donors that are giving more. And if you're noticing that, you're not wrong and you're not crazy. In fact, you're very much right. And it's been happening for quite some time as the number of people actually giving to charity keeps declining. So we have this data from, it's by the way, all this data is kind of spotty. I have to put it all together into a nice package for you because it's all over the place. So I found this from Target Analytics, Blackbaud company. It shows that the number of donors are declining, right? About 2.8% a year. But their data sort of stops off there. So then I picked it up with the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, which actually from 2017 to 18, they showed a bigger drop, 4.5% of people dropped out of giving altogether. And then in the first quarter of last year, they saw another big drop year over year. Now this is interesting and sad, but interesting because you would think that the number of people donating would increase because the size of the bubble, the population, if you will, of the plus 65 generation, which are the people that donate, is growing. And it's going to continue to grow for quite some time. So this is a little perplexing. Also, since the population, especially in the States, keeps growing by about 0.5% to 1% each year. So we've got more people, but fewer people are donating. In addition, I mean, the economy was on track, right? So when I first pulled a lot of this data for this, doing these webinars, the economy was on track and we had historically low unemployment, yet during that time, fewer people were giving and they were dropping out of giving. But at the same time, companies like Starbucks are seeing, their sales just continue to grow, just as an example. So it's kind of like, okay, so people are making the value decision that they're happy to buy coffee, but they're not interested in donating. So it's kind of like that selection of what to do with the share of wallet is fascinating to me. It's like, wow, people are getting more, basically saying they're getting more value from something like Starbucks than they are from the charities that they might support. So now, while I say all this, I want to give you like an anomaly alert, because by the end of Q2 of last year, we saw, or the Fundraising Effectiveness Project that studies this, saw that there was an increase in donors and an increase in donations. Now, I remember at the very beginning of the pandemic, we did a series of webinars, and all the consultants that we engage with, and everybody was, at least on our side, we were recommending that you do not slow down and you do not disengage from donors. And if the timing's right, you certainly should ask, because the pandemic doesn't mean that you're not without need. In fact, you have more need. And Americans, especially Canadians, Australians, I mean, I'm pretty much familiar with those three countries the most, but they're very philanthropic in times of distress. So if your organization sort of recoiled at this time, clearly that was a bad move, because the anomaly that happened about the donor shrinkage, if you will, and it perked up. More people stepped up and gave. And in fact, acquisition of new donors took a really giant leap. So interestingly, pandemics are a great time for many organizations, not all maybe, to acquire new donors. Okay, so putting aside that anomaly, why in general are donor bases shrinking? Okay, so I'm going to give you a few reasons that I found. One of them is that people are becoming less religious. So this Gallup poll shows that the percent of people stating that they have no religion is continuing to increase. Followed up by this study from the it's Jumpstart Labs, sorry, is a study of the American giving or religious giving. And I mean, the core of it is, and we all know this instinctively, that the more important religion is to a person, the more likely they are to give to charity of any kind. So, and this is a terrible looking chart. It was literally taken right out of the Chronicle of Philanthropy, but giving to religion as a share of total giving has been on decline for many years now, many years, decades. So if people are less religious, I guess is what we're saying, is they're stopping, that's inhibiting giving. But another point is sort of this growing acceptance of socialism. And by the way, this is not a political discussion. I'm just looking at the tea leaves here, is that, for instance, before the election, way before, 56% of likely Democratic caucus goers were saying that they'd be satisfied with a nominee who thinks the US should be more socialist. So the thing about socialism is it's kind of incongruent with philanthropy, because it's really sort of the capitalist notion that helped build the philanthropic mindset of the American culture. Of course, we have Canadians, Australians, and someone from Russia here, but it's interesting to me that in addition to this growing acceptance of socialism, that there's also a decline of favorability of capitalism among all the age groups that were studied, especially in this YouGov.com study. So by the way, when you get the slides, you'll be able to click around to all of these links to see where all this came from. But the bottom line with this is that, socialist countries generally have hardly any philanthropy or much less, right? So if we're growing as a society to believe and trust in the government to take care of us, which may change after this rollout of the way they're distributing vaccines. Who knows, maybe that'll all change, but doubtful. But if people are becoming more likely to believe that their taxes should take care of things, if you will, then that's not a good sign for the charitable sector, the nonprofit sector. But the biggest thing that I believe is causing this is really the fact that people, their trust in the nonprofit sector is declining. So this give.org study asked people, do you trust charities more, less, or the same as 5 years ago? And only 10% said that they think they feel more trusting of charities, while 32% said that they trust charities less than they did 5 years ago. And furthermore, they said in the report that only 10% were optimistic that their trust would improve over time. Trust, by the way, is the cornerstone in the foundation of any transaction, whether it's giving to a charity or buying a car. I mean, you would not buy a car that you don't trust will start. And you won't give to a charity that you don't trust will do the right thing with your money. So trust is really, really important. And if people are becoming less trusting, that is a serious, serious problem for our sector. So this Edelman Trust Barometer, which is really pretty cool, and again, you can see the links, showed that there's a 9% drop. This is back in 2018, not too long ago, in trust for non-government organizations. These are nonprofits. But what's more important here in this stat, or the stats that they gave out, is that 18% fewer, or there's an 18% drop of trust among the informed public. This is the more highly educated people, which are also the types of people that are more likely to give and give more money. So that's quite a sizable drop. And not to keep kicking sand in your face, don't worry, it'll get better. I'm going to give you solutions. But it's interesting that recently the survey found that people actually trust private business more than they trust the nonprofit sector. So this is when you see, of course, I work at a private business. I own a private business. So in some ways, I'm okay with that. But no, we want our charities to be trusted. Another component is that the competition for all of you keeps increasing. The number of charities, the last data point I could find was only up until 2015, but boy, oh boy, I mean, in 15 years, the number of charities increased, it doubled. I'm fairly certain that it's continuing to grow at a high brisk rate because people can create charities like on their kitchen table, you know, with their friends. It's just so easy to do right now. So all this is happening, yet total giving, total amounts given to charity, especially in the States, continue to grow, right? So this is like a head scratcher. Is if fewer people are giving, why is it that more money has been given to charity? In fact, the Giving USA doesn't have the 2020 numbers out yet, so I'm using 2019, and it was $449 billion were given to charity. That was the highest mark ever for the states, and I think it's going to go way, way beyond that when the 2020 numbers come out. So, you know, that's the head scratcher, right? And you can also see it in the data that my company provides for free. If you're not familiar with the fundraising report card, it's a metrics visualizer that I built for the sector, and I give it away for free because most people just at nonprofits just don't know and can't see their numbers. So you can go to fundraisingreportcard.com and use it and visualize. You'll see all your charts that you need. Again, it's free. There's no game. There's no hook to it. Also, if you go to /benchmarks, you'll see where these numbers are today. I took a snapshot at the end of 2020 to show you this, but you know, the average donation amount increased, and it's been hovering kind of nicely there at $270 average. So that's interesting, but what's really happening is retention is just continuing to go down. Whoops. Careful, bear with me. Acrobat wanted to install something. So yeah, retention rates continue to go down, and revenue retained, which is a little different than donors retained, keeps going down as well. Now, first-time donor retention is at the lowest point I've ever seen at 17.66%. Reactivated donors are down quite a bit, and repeat donors are going down. This is not good stuff, right? Now, if you look at it, if we compare $100 donors, let's just look at the $100, under $100 donors, the rate of retention went, interestingly, this is just the change from September and then to December of this year, or I'm sorry, last year. It dropped. But now if you look at $5,000, well, and remember there was this anomaly, earlier in the first and second quarter of the year. Now, if you look at $5,000 donors and higher, the donation or donor retention rate is almost double, not quite really, and it increased from September to December of last year. So the bigger donors, the wealthier people, are retaining at a much higher rate. So here you can kind of see it laid out for one another. Is on the left is all the under $100 donor metrics, and on the right is the 5,000 plus donor metrics. So you can see the difference of the average donation. And this is as of December, I guess. And then for the retention rate is just, it's just about double. And the lifetime value is astronomical, clearly. And this doesn't include legacy gifts. Of course, people who give more during their lifetime are probably more capable of making much larger legacy gifts. So this is kind of the basis for what I'm calling fundraising climate change. And it's really showing us that what we used to say, the Pareto principle, which is also known as the 80-20 rule, it's really wildly changed. It's no longer 80-20. It's no longer that, 80% of your revenue will come from 20% of your donors. It's more like 67% of your revenue will come from 0.59% of your donors. Okay, so I look at this from our fundraising fundraising report card metrics. We can see that 0.59% of any organization's donor base on average, we've got 8,000 users, by the way, of that application. So looking at that data, that almost 0.5% of people make up about 67% or almost 2/3 of all the donation revenue. While the donors giving under $100, and remember, they're the ones that are much less likely to retain, are 79 or 80% of an organization's donor base, but they make up only 7.81% of all donation revenue. So let's take a quick break and take a quick poll. I'm going to launch the poll just a second here. I'm curious, is your organization experiencing this donors down, dollars up kind of situation where fewer donors are there, but you're getting larger gifts? So I'll give it another 5-10 seconds. Let people take the poll. Yep, a lot of you are. Okay, there's a lot more coming in here. So yeah, I'll wait till it slows down a little bit, but I don't want to miss all these votes. This is fascinating. Hang in there. All right, I'm going to 3, 2, 1. All right, let's see what we got here. So yeah, it's looks like it's about 53% say they're noticing it, 28% say no, and 19% are not sure. Okay, so congratulations to you who say no, that's not happening. Good for you. I'm gonna share that. Make sure y'all got that. All right, cool. I'm gonna stop sharing that. All right. Now, one thought about this, just before I continue, is that there is this notion, and I gave it a name. I made up a lot of phrases for the sector when I first got into it. I call it populist fundraising, right? So it's kind of this idea that we want everybody to have an opportunity to give. We want to spread the joy of giving. So the more, and the more people that give, you want to round out your base, if you will. I'm here to tell you, I think most organizations' bases are actually too rounded out, is what it looks like. They kind of more so have like a big base and then kind of a space needle of big donors at the top. I'd rather see us round out the middle than round out the bottom. And populist fundraising really works best for politicians, because each gift essentially is a vote, and it's creating a groundswell. It also kind of works in planned giving, legacy giving, because anybody can make a legacy gift, and even people who couldn't make a lot of donations during their lifetime, they can save their biggest gift for afterwards. However, most of the legacy dollars come from very few, only 20% of the legacy gifts. And I'll bring that up in a minute. In fact, here it is. Okay, yeah. So this is a study, not my research. This is a study from the Lilly School that found that 82% of the dollars for legacy giving come from 20% of the donors. And if you look at just 10% of the donors, that's 66% of the dollars. So it really, what it says is that, yes, you want to give everybody the opportunity, but for the sake of your organization, you probably want to be a little bit more focused and a little less populist in your strategy. So another reason why this is happening is because of the fragmentation of marketing channels. In other words, it's harder to reach people than ever. In the past, when I was growing up, we had TV, we had I don't know, maybe 7 channels, and the rest were kind of fuzzy. And we had radio and newspaper, direct mail, telephone, maybe a couple other things like events. So these older channels, they're being replaced by the computer and the digital channels, and there's just so many of them, which makes it harder for marketing teams at your organizations to do their jobs. I do not envy their positions. Plus, then you have big companies, big tech and such that could decide that your mission is not worthy to some degree, and they can suppress people finding it even. And then you have the charity watchdogs and such that get involved in this, and so it's like swatting flies with this channel fragmentation, trying to figure out, how do you really get to people? How do you reach them? How do you engage them? How do you solicit them using mass marketing channels? It's very hard, and only getting harder. But what really adds to the pile is the change in donor preferences that's happening, and it is a very big change, especially from the baby boomer generation and older, that is really whittling away. But the baby boomers have much different preferences than younger people, or me. I'm a Generation Xer. One of the biggest things is this arrival of donor self-sufficiency, right? So Penelope Burke wrote in her book, Donor-Centered Fundraising, and it was focused on in this Advancing Philanthropy magazine, is that she surveyed 3,000 bequest donors and asked, do you have a planned gift officer? And only 18% said yes. The majority said, well, they give me everything I need, but I really don't need much from them, which is kind of painful, you know, considering all the talent that is out there in the sector, and smarts and experience, and what you can do to help people make smart giving decisions. But donors are feeling self-sufficient. They think they want to do it themselves or go it alone, or they'll reach out to their own estate planners or attorneys and accountants and such. So this especially, I would think, pertains to people who have a lot of money. So that 20% or 10% of legacy donors are going to make plans mostly on their own. That set of preferences, I call this the four selves, and I wrote about this in my book, which, by the way, I give away for free. If you want a free copy, just contact us and we will give it to you. Of course, if you buy it, I mean, I give all the money that I get from it to charity anyway. So if you want to support that, then buy it. But we talk about, in the book, I write about what I call the four selves, which is that people want to self-qualify. They want to decide that they're in your caseload, if you will, if you're a major gift person. They want to self-educate. They want to be able to go online and learn about the impact they could make through your organization. They want to do that on their own. They want to self-involve. They want to see videos are very powerful. And they even want to self-solicit. They want to tell themselves. They don't, the more you push, the more they push back these days. Okay, so this is why, like, the junk mailing, the telemarketing, the spam is not working as well as it once did. And I believe that this overwhelming over solicitation among charities across the board is what's driving donors to become disengaged and to drop out of giving altogether. Okay, people want more value, just like they get from Starbucks. They want value from our sector. And when they're over solicited and always asked, because there's always a double, triple match, or there's some panic, yet they never hear back, like, what did you do with the money and such, that really is driving people away. I believe that. And if anybody doesn't, then I just ask you to ask yourself if you like getting telemarketing calls at dinner time. You probably don't, you know? So interestingly, a 92-year-old lady named Olive Cook was giving to every charity she could in Great Britain. And because of that, and because they were selling her name to other charities, which I don't understand, but they do that here in the States too. It's like they sell the names of their best donors to their competition. Okay, I don't understand, but anyway, people do that, and then you end up, a donor like her will end up getting tons and tons more mailings. So she was actually reported on because of all of the giving that she did. And then she ended up, shortly thereafter, she unfortunately took her life. Now, this ended up a big story in Great Britain. And a lot of people wanted to say that she killed herself because of all the overzealous solicitations. And that's not really exactly the case. I mean, even her family says that she was depressed and such. But nonetheless, this caused the General Data Protection Regulation. I mean, it probably was bubbling up anyway, but then when this happened, it's like, all right, we're going to create this opt-in permit, and we're all dealing with this now. And there's going to be more regulations coming our way. But it's just, that's taking it sort of to the nth degree of what can happen. So, okay, if there's more competition, if there's less people giving, if trust is declining, if a tiny fraction of your donor base is making up the majority of your revenue, channels are fragmenting, so it's harder to reach people, and their preferences are changing, which you might not even know what their preferences are. Like, what are you going to do? And I'm not the only one saying it. Elizabeth Boris here from the Growth and Giving Institute says, giving's increasing thanks to larger gifts from richer donors, but the smaller and mid-level donors are slowly but surely disappearing. Another person, Brian Lauterbach over at Network for Good, wrote, nonprofit organizations are being challenged by these major political, demographic, economic, technological factors, and most organizations are finding themselves flat-footed. This is what we're seeing across the board as well. The organizations don't want to change, the leadership doesn't want to change, but the results are just either the same or getting worse. So that brings us to poll number 2, which, poll 2. All right, so do you believe that fundraising climate change is real? Don't be afraid, this is anonymous. If you think I'm wrong, and just go ahead and say no. All right. Wow, you all are fast on the trigger this time. Hundreds are piling in here voting. I'll give it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, share results. Holy cow, it's a resounding 89%. Believe it. All right, I'm not crazy. Thank you. And only 1% said no. That's a very small number, but okay, cool. And of course, 11% say maybe. All right, you're with me. So far, so good. All right, so what should we do, right? I promised you I'd give you some good highlights here and some good ideas. I don't want you to leave here and be depressed. You can actually thrive and succeed in the era of fundraising climate change. I'm going to tell you about one of our newer customers. I mean, many of you have probably heard of Charity Water. I mean, this is an organization that grew from 0 to, I think it's like 150 million in like 10 years. I mean, how does that happen? Right? It's not like there weren't charities that were digging wells and providing clean water before. How did Charity Water do that? And a lot of what I'm about to tell you is really what they did. So it's not about more. It's not about more junk mail, telemarketing, over solicitation, more spam. That's actually that's exactly the opposite of what you should do. Remember, the donor preferences are changing, and a lot of people are just frankly fed up with the way that they're treated. Remember Starbucks. I mean, they're thinking about the value they get and they're looking at every single charity that they care about, and they're wondering, are they treating me fairly? Like, are they selling my name? Are they reporting back to me? Are they treating me respectfully? Are they giving me control over my decision-making process? Did they ask me for permission? I mean, even to opt in to be on a caseload. A lot of times organizations build caseloads without asking a supporter for permission. Do you want, like, inviting them? Do you want to be on our caseload for this higher level, deeper relationship? Do you want that? No, we'll just put them on the caseload and then we'll just chase them. I mean, it's not nice. Do you provide them with an opportunity to self-navigate the decision-making process? And very powerful motivator is, are you giving them convenience? Are you removing obstacles and friction from the decision-making or the giving process? I mean, Amazon, next to like 7-Eleven, or if you have Circle K or whatever, convenience stores. But Amazon is the greatest invention of convenience. That's why we use it. It's not just the low prices, it's convenience, everything about it. It's very powerful. But are we taking all of these concepts and providing our donors, customers, with a package of value? Or are we just sort of saying thank you, sort of weakly and meekly, because that's what everybody says that you're supposed to do? And then we just run away until the next time that we're going to solicit them, because they're thinking about the value, and they're also, they're deciding at a certain time when they're ready, especially major and legacy donors. There's a readiness to give. There's a small window of when people are ready to give. So like I said briefly earlier, is that if you're hounding donors for attention and for money before they're ready, especially the major and legacy supporters, if you ask them when they're not ready, your solicitation's going to fall flat. One of the weirdest things I read when I first got into the sector was the number one reason why people don't give is because they weren't asked. Okay, so I don't believe that. You could tweak it and say the number one reason is because they weren't asked at the right time when they were ready. But if you just say that you should ask, you're going to piss people off. Nobody wants to be asked when they're not ready. It's very disconcerting, I can tell you, as a major donor. It knocks you off. So we're going to talk about readiness in a few minutes and how you figure that out. But I just want to say there are going to be some pretty big winners and some really big losers in the future, because just like Encyclopedia Britannica was, replaced by Wikipedia, and cabs are kind of getting replaced sort of by Uber, but especially Blockbuster got replaced by Netflix and many more now coming out. I mean, these are all because of technology. The businesses and charities that master how to leverage technology to provide exponentially more value at lower cost are the ones that are going to thrive. If you are at a college or university, you are probably at the tip of the spear with regard to this, in that a lot of especially the smaller liberal arts schools are under some serious fundamental stress. I could do a whole webinar just on that, but if you're in the red and you're looking to just pound people to get more money out of them like an ATM, it's probably not going to work. So the best way to cut costs and raise more money is actually with technology. And if you implement that in a smart way, you'll sort of surf past this climate change that's happening. So in the end, when you employ technology in a wise way, the board, the leadership, you, the fundraisers, and especially your donors end up a lot happier. So, okay, let's talk about all this. Let's talk about how you can survive and thrive, what you can do about all this. And I'll preface this by saying that there is not a quick fix. For all the people looking for shiny silver bullets, unfortunately, that's not going to help you. It will drain your bank account and it will probably cause more frustration. But the traditional interruptive, transactional and arm's length approaches that are focused on small gifts to be made impulsively by low dollar donors are not your best bet. But a contemporary technology enabled, compassionate, donor-centric approach that's a little slower, so that makes it less attractive, but it's the plan that actually wins the race, okay? Especially if you're helping supporters self-navigate the decision-making process for what I call the highly considered decision. This is not a transactional decision. This is a highly considered decision. And one that really requires a tremendous amount of value as donors are navigating the decision-making process. They need to see value. So my first recommendation is that you focus a little less on the lower dollar donors. I know people get addicted to that, especially leadership, but with retention rates so poor, it doesn't make sense to keep throwing so much good money after bad. Think of it like this. If it's no longer the 80-20 rule, right? And if 0.59% of your donors on average are making up 67% of your revenue, and 7.8% of your donors are making up just about 8% of your revenue, where are your budgets? Usually it's flipped. It's like 80-90% of your budget is going to be focused on generating the low dollar donations. And I'm going to urge you to reconsider and see where you might try leveraging technology in new ways to generate more of the major donors, the legacy donors, or to move the mid-level donors up, okay? So when I say this, and I talk about like find new major donors at low cost, a lot of times people think of the donor pyramid and they think, well, the only way to do that is to look at our low dollar donors and then try and find out who's wealthy, although wealth screening only looks at publicly available data, so it's not 100% accurate. And then you try to move up those donors, usually by soliciting them more and by asking them for more money, which is kind of a contrary to everything I'm trying to tell you to do. And not only that, but I'm telling you that there are major donors in your midst. You're just not providing them the right amount of value. So the first thing, the easiest thing to do to find new major donors is really to ask your current major donors, either with a survey online, an email, or you could just send them an email one-off on your own. That's an easy way to scale that kind of initiative. Or very simply ask your board members, put a little mini survey in a board member packet, because your board members, if they're chosen properly and if they have capacity, probably have friends that are similar to them and that care about similar causes. Next, you're really going to want to look at your volunteers. Right? A lot of times they're right there. They're at your museum, but they haven't been paid attention to in the proper way. In other words, from this, it's getting a little dated now. The study on high net worth philanthropy is that 49.7% of your high net worth individuals will volunteer. So I guess what I'm saying is it's very likely that your volunteers have capacity and that they're sort of testing you. They wanted to get involved and give their time before they gave their money. And they say, according to the study, that they want to give and they will give to the organizations that they volunteer for. So if you're not really engaging your volunteers deeply and offering them an opportunity to even get a deeper relationship and a one-to-one relationship by joining your caseload, you're really missing out. So that's the second place I would look. Third is social media. We find this all the time, is that if our customers promote things on social media, great offers, not solicitations, but offers for engagement, then people come out of the woodwork. They may like your mission on Facebook, but have never given. And you can even advertise on Facebook by demographics and potential education level and things that are gonna make it likely that you're hitting on people who have capacity. But this, there was a little, and you'll see the link here, there was a little experiment done by BWF. We don't have any real relationship with them. I just found this online. And they did this, basically all they did was offered people on Facebook, and they targeted the higher net worth and older people and asked them if they would like to sign up for a newsletter. Well, that resulted in this little test finding 43 new major donor prospects and adding them to caseloads because they opted in. So I could go on and give more examples of that, but I'm just telling you, it is possible to do it at low cost using technology like a mini survey or Facebook and whatnot. Number two is that you've really got to you've got to have a supportive mindset. It's really the law of reciprocity. It's a giving mindset and a supportive mindset that if you support your supporters, they'll support your mission. So the only way to support them, though, is to really know them, who they are, why they care, and especially where they are in the consideration continuum so that you don't ask when they're not ready, especially because remember, for highly considered decisions, major gifts, you've got to ask at the right time. So this is about focusing on them and their needs and a little less on your organization's process. What I found is most nonprofits spend, I want to say, most of their time focused on their internal operations and their process. It kind of looks like this, you know, we're going to identify, we're going to qualify, we're going to cultivate, solicit. This is what we're going to do. But there's very little attention paid to, okay, where is each donor? What do they want at each stage? So I like to look at them both ways. You know, you've got to have your operations straight, but you also have to pay attention to where each supporter is along this consideration continuum. Are they just in the awareness and interest stages, which is where most of them are going to be? This is the widest part of the funnel. Or are they in the desire or especially the action stage? That's where there's going to be fewer people, but at least they're ready to take action. Or are they in the joy or remorse stage? This is also what you would call for where stewardship happens, you know? But the minute that the money leaves their bank account, they're going to reevaluate you and your organization and start thinking, do they have buyer's remorse, if you will? Are they upset? Are they getting, are they feeling that they made a mistake? So knowing where each donor is in the consideration continuum will help you understand what you can do to support people throughout their continuum, their decision-making process. Now, this is very different from how it works for low-dollar impulse-oriented decisions. I mean, if you're going to give cash or check or use your credit card because you got an email and you want to give $50. I mean, that's going to happen like in 3 seconds. You're going to make that decision and then you're going to go give. What we're talking about is something that takes on average years. 6 months to 2 years, according to our research, is how long it takes to close a major gift. So again, this is the highly considered decision, and this involves assets, not cash. Think of cash and checks and credit cards as coming as a teeny tiny little bucket, because most people don't have the vast majority of their money, especially people with capacity. They have the vast majority of their money in assets. So people who are giving away their assets are making a highly considered decision. And that process is going to, essentially, it breaks down to 2 stages. It's either a why stage that people are in. They're thinking, why should I give? You know, do I want to repay society? Do I want to help out because the doctor saved my mom's life and such? And then there's a very narrow window that they enter where they're in the how stage. Okay, how am I going to do this? Am I going to sell stock that's been appreciated? Am I going to give away my house? Do I want to live in my house? Maybe that becomes a retained life estate. You know, so this is something that they're going to think about at a smaller window compared with the why stage. And then after they've given, then they enter that stewardship stage of reconsidering. And then we've got this red line because remember, the legacy gift, if they leave a legacy gift, that's not going to happen until they pass away. I mean, in most cases, right? So it's sad actually, a lot of people sort of count legacy gift disclosures, but Dr. Russell James' research found that only about 65% of people who say that they left a gift in their estate plan for a charity and they tell you about it, only 65% actually come true. So that means people are either lying or they change their minds. I think most of them change their minds before they pass away. And I think that happens because they're not stewarded properly, because they're not feeling supported after they make that decision. So this is all about building trust and delivering value. If you haven't noticed the theme, you have to build trust and think about their lives. And you, by the way, probably do this, and you spend every day and night thinking about your supporters and how you can service them and take care of them. The problem is that there's only a small number of you, and there are hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands or maybe even millions for some of you of donors. So to build this trust and deliver value at scale is not something that humans can really do by themselves. And I'm talking about learning about them. This is essentially, I'm talking about how do you build like donor discovery at scale in order to support supporters. Well, one of the ways we recommend, and we found out worked exceptionally well about 10 years ago, and now there's a whole bunch of copycats, which is nice. I'm glad that people see value, but donor surveys work really, really well. I should point out though, that out of all the copycats, what breaks my heart about it is that people have warped the concept. They now use donor surveys to collect information in order to, in other words, they use it to extract and to take from donors, rather than to collect the information so that they can determine how to give to the donors and support them along their consideration continuum. See, people really got it messed up that copied us, sadly. They thought, oh, this is a neat trick so I can sell printing or something. But that's not, it's not a trick. It's people's lives, and they're taking time out of their lives to tell you all about them so that you can support them. So if you don't use that information and you just maybe skim off the top and take the top leads from a survey, then you're going to piss off everybody else who took the survey, and then you're right back where you started, but probably even worse off. So I guess I'm getting on my high horse, but don't do a survey unless you're really prepared to use the information to support your supporters. Okay. Now you don't have to buy the survey from us. I mean, that's part of what we sell, and we'll get into that at the very end. But you can learn. I'll teach you everything you need to know. You can check out my podcast, read my book, or read this guide. And here's the link. You can learn all you need to know about donor surveys and conduct them so that you can support your supporters. I urge you, I beg you, don't survey people if you're not prepared to really cultivate really just about all of them that take the time to answer the questions. Okay, it's not nice. You'll piss people off. Okay, so once you get your survey answers, then you know what to say to people, but you'll need to drive them to a VIP zone. So you're going to want to not solicit them, but support them, and you're going to want to give them a VIP microsite. So that's not this. This is a regular website for college, and it's got all these drop downs and different things going on, and generally small fonts, and it's about for the parents and admissions and all that, right? So this is probably like most organizations, they have so much on their website. What I'm saying is you need to develop a special VIP zone that's just for people to self-navigate through the major gift decision-making process. And you need to drip, drip, drip cultivation that provides them with value, and the links in those emails or letters or phone call messages you leave, you need to tell people, go here and go to your zone, because here's where they'll feel good. They can, in fact, donate, and they will. donate. In fact, we find that people who use this process, their supporters that actually engage with this process give 300% more. That's 3 times more, just because you're giving them information and helping them self-navigate. So you want to give them that. And in fact, we created this DAF widget. It's a donor advised fund widget. So if you can get it for free, it's another free tool I offer at dafwidget.com. And you can download the snippet code and give it to your team and put it next to your donate button. Because remember, a good growing percentage of your supporters are going to have a donor advised fund these days, and they already got their tax benefit, so they just need to move the money. So if you put that DAF widget there next to the donate now button, you'll get more like $5,000 from them instead of 50 bucks. So the way it works is they just can click and search for their fund. There's like 800 or 900 funds in our widget. And again, it's free. You can get the code for free at dafwidget.com, and they'll find their DAF and then they'll give. But other things are like your top navigation needs to be different. It needs to be geared for the generally older population, and it needs to be about them. And kind of tap into their memory about their life and the impact that they can have, and provide them with convenience. So the last part of this is that you can put tracking code on any web page, and if you tie it to a donor record and a donor ID with certain technology, I mean, you could use ours, or there's others, there's like 150 others out there, honestly. You could piece it together, and then you want to monitor your supporters' donor digital body language. In other words, you want to see where they're clicking so that you can determine when they're ready. Are they clicking on why type buttons, or are they clicking on how type buttons? In other words, a how type button is that they clicked on giving from their donor advised fund, right? It's a very different click than if they're just looking to meet people like them. That's more of a why than a how click. All right, so the third is, and we're really short on time, I'm going to go a few minutes over, but we're almost done, is you need to give to your givers using the law of reciprocity. If you're at a university, one of the things I recommend is digitize your old yearbooks, and then instead of over soliciting people, why not just give them an opportunity to get an old digital version of their yearbook? I mean, you want to talk about ingratiating yourself to a bunch of people that probably have capacity to make a major impact. This is the way to do it. Another way is when people come forward and make legacy gifts, go ahead and promote that on Facebook. You know, give the average folk some notoriety or whatever it is that they want, but find ways to give to your supporters. It may be, if they're in the how stage of considering, for instance, a legacy gift, you might want to give them a toolkit, you know, or a workbook. So there's like hundreds of things that you can give, whether it's a tour, whether it's a video, whether it's VIP access that you can do. But if you have a giving and supportive mindset and you're focused on the 80-20, then you're going to end up with a lot better results. Last one. Okay, so this is a quick bonus. Is that you've got to focus on some bequest giving. I mean, you look at a person like Donna here who gives 250 bucks every year compared to someone like Sharon who makes a legacy gift of, say, $57,000. I mean, it would take 228 years for Donna to equal Sharon's legacy gift impact. So if you're getting pushback on adding budget for bequest marketing, just maybe use this slide or graphic when you get the slides and show it to your boss. All right, so that ends my presentation. I'm going to look at questions in a minute, and Jeff, my handy dandy helper, is going to probably serve them up to me. But before I do, I'm going to give you the 1 to 2 minutes pitch on what Market Smart really does for those of you who don't know. We are a software, technology, and service company. We operate in a turnkey fashion so that in a matter of weeks, nonprofits can get up and running with a focus, leveraging technology on the wealthiest, highest capacity, most passionate donors, using a system that involves a survey that essentially conducts donor discovery at massive scale. And once we get the information from the supporters, our AI thinks about where they are in the consideration process and what they said they were interested in, why they cared, and all these things that they told us. And then we start automating cultivation emails that you would send if only you had the time to read hundreds and thousands of surveys and to craft the messages properly. And you had all the data to know which messages actually work. And if you had the time to write all those messages and send them. So our system basically takes all that information and engages with large numbers of high capacity philanthropic supporters. As they engage with these emails and click to go to a VIP zone, they end up on average giving 3 times more. But that doesn't include really what you can get if you engage with them. So in other words, that's why we provide a dashboard so that fundraisers, gift officers can look in there to either build marketing lists that are highly personalized and relevant, targeted, or they can use it to determine who's ready for outreach so they can meet with the people who are in that stage, the action stage of the consideration continuum. So that's what we do. On average, we aim for 10-to-1 return on any investment in our system in the first year, and 100 times return on investment over the lifetime of use. This is usually, from what I've been told, exponentially greater return on investment than most types of marketing efforts that nonprofits, use. Here's just one testimonial. There's many others that we have, but this is a wonderful lady who was just getting started and just a couple weeks in had told us that she calculated from the gifts she closed really quickly that she was at 60-to-1 ROI and she hadn't even really scratched the surface. So that's what we do. We help you consider. In fact, I'm gonna implore you to consider a test, like look at your budget and the fact that most of it's probably spent on things like spam and junk mail and postage, events, travel, maybe not so much anymore, and dining, maybe not so much anymore. But consider just 1% of that budget be appropriated to us. And if you do, you can get at least 10-to-1 return on your investment guaranteed, or your money back. So that's our pitch. You can learn more by emailing us or just clicking on the button on our website to get a demo. And I hope you will. We won't pressure you or over solicit you. All right, that's the Engagement Fundraising Challenge. I guess we'll go to questions finally. Mr. Jeff.
All right, I'm coming back on here. So we did have some questions in the kind of question box first that I think we can address. Just to make sure everyone knows, because this is actually one of the questions in there, you will receive the slides, you will receive a recording of this. Give us just usually a few days, maybe till Monday, something like that at latest ish, but we'll get everybody the slides and a recording. But to go over to some other questions here, one question in a way, this is from an anonymous attendee, they were asking about if you feel the 67.59 rule, if that is expected to change at all under this new administration and sort of the redistribution of wealth of sorts that's intended anyways. Do you see things continuing changing? What's your thought?
Wow, I don't. And I'm going to actually refrain from answering it because I hate to get political. I'm not interested in that. And I don't read tea leaves of administrations very well. But I don't see this redistribution. I just don't see the people who are getting this money as all of a sudden becoming philanthropic. I just don't see that that's what's going to happen. If anything, I think this is just going to continue to grow, sadly, unless the sector changes how they're what they're doing that is causing trust to be diminished. Unless the sector changes and stops over soliciting and beating up even their best donors, I don't see it changing.
Got it. Got it. So one question that came up, but I'm going to expand upon a little bit. Somebody asked, how do you think DAF grants factor into the favorable stats regarding donors of $5,000 plus? But I think we could expand it even out to kind of saying major gifts of assets, how that's affecting, you know, some of those trends. So maybe you did touch on that, but maybe you want to touch on it a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. So look, first on DAFs, I mean, there's a reason. I'm going to tell you, I don't know if many people say this, and maybe I'm the only one who believes it, but there's a reason why people are putting money in DAFs before they just give it to charities. It's because they're not sure. They don't have the trust. They want the tax deduction and they want to give the money away. So they put it in a donor advised fund, but then they wait to make the final decision, you know, to pull the trigger. Again, this is because they're not trusting. So sorry, I'm not sure if I took us off track, but our major gifts, is that number, you know, in general, it's just major gifts of assets is where that number comes from. And people with assets. So yeah, Jeff, refresh me if I'm even answering the question in the right way. Is this helping?
Yeah, I think the question revolved around more or less if you felt that, you know, the rise in less people giving more and those people who are still giving more had anything to do with major gifts of assets. And, you know, the short answer is yes, absolutely. If you watch our webinar with Dr. James last year about major gifts of assets, he has a whole bunch of compelling case studies that compare similar organizations and their annual revenue compared to the percentage of that revenue that comes from major gifts of assets. And it's pretty extraordinary, the difference in overall revenue when you even just have slightly higher numbers in the percentage of revenue that comes from major gifts of assets.
Yeah, I mean, in other words, it's not that because people are putting money in DAFs that you're ending up with this wacky 80-20 version. That's not it. I just don't think that's it because DAFs are popular. I think it's just that the rich have a lot of money and the middle class has been hollowed out. And I don't see that getting better. Honestly, I'm no economist and I don't understand, you know, the politics. I know every politician says they're going to make the middle class better, but none of them have. So I don't see anybody pulling out a trick right now. All right, what's next?
I'll throw in, this wasn't a question from the crowd, but I think it applies to a lot of folks out there. And we run into it trying to help folks just adopt what we do. But with kind of the historical trends that have helped charities get to where they are today, in terms of more of a populist fundraising effort, as you would describe it, how do you kind of get through to convincing a board and a leadership that really has never adopted technology, doesn't maybe even believe in some of these things? You know, what's the way to sort of begin even that conversation or continue it?
Yeah, so it will take time. And, you know, the laws of persuasion involve never trying to tell somebody what they should believe, but rather helping them come to the conclusion on their own. So for instance, I mean, you could buy my book, or get it for free and give it to them. You know, you could send them this webinar. But they've got to start recognizing, or frankly, and if you're in a leadership position, you got to throw them off the board. I mean, if all they want to do is the same events that are producing the same results over and over, I mean, look, it's just not going to get you to a level of impact. And plus, they're just very costly. I mean, unless you're getting 10-to-1 ROI or 100-to-1 return on investment from events or whatever else it is that you're doing, then you really got to ask them, like, can we try something new? I mean, a lot of times trying something new is a matter of just sending out a few thousand less letters and saving the postage to try something else. You got to experiment. Yeah.
There's a question that just came in from Rachel. Should we be concerned with donor burnout as we rely heavily on high-level donors year after year?
Nope. I'll tell you this, and this is as a major donor, as someone who knows major donors, if you do it right and you're providing value, and the result is that they're crying tears of joy because they were able to make impact or repay society or give back or whatever it is that they wanted to achieve with their money. If you provide them with that level of value, it's just the same as people going back to Starbucks all the time. Nobody gets tired of going to Starbucks. If the value is there, if the release of dopamine happens, if they get excited, if they gain notoriety, if they feel good, if they have the capacity, and most of them in that category do, they will not only keep giving, but they'll go bigger next time. I promise you. This notion of donor burnout only happens if you over solicit, pummel, pelt. You can only burn someone out if you light them up with a match. Don't light them up with a match. Maybe treat them well and you won't burn them out. I promise you.
So there's only one remaining question here, and we'll see if you're able to answer. So they said, and I think you've kind of addressed it, early on, but how does a nonprofit who doesn't have a pull on the heartstrings cause navigate this climate? For instance, my nonprofit focuses on foreign policy and international relations.
Well, I'm assuming that the people that support that nonprofit have an interest and a passion for foreign policy and international relations. So the trick isn't to necessarily create a tearjerker, but it's to appeal to what level of value do supporters of that kind of cause want to gain. If they're a sponsor, for instance, like if they're a business sponsor, that's a different kind of value proposition than a donor, like a individual donor. But an individual, so let's talk about the sponsor first. They usually want some kind of, what do you call that? They were talking about it during the impeachment. Not status quo. Anyway, you give to me, I give to you. It's a payback thing. So thanks, Jeff. You got me the word. No, but
quid pro quo. Someone else.
Quid pro quo. Thank you. Yes, yeah. That's pretty much what happens with like sponsors or sponsorships, corporations that are funding things. But with individual donors, there's got to be some kind of desire. There's something in that person's life story that made them care about foreign policy. Right? So you've got to look in their autobiography, ask them why they care. Then if you ask 10 or 20, you're going to end up with a certain number of buckets. There's only so many usually. And then you can start giving to them in relation to that. So I hope that helps. But if any bit of transaction is already occurring, there's a reason. And people have their reasons. And if you ask them, they'll tell you those reasons. And then I would just try and find more people that have those reasons. Hope that helps. I think, Rachel, thank you. All right, so this is going to wrap it up. I think that's about it. Thank you for still staying on. About 100 people still sitting here. Appreciate it. And this is Greg Warner signing off with Market Smart. Again, if you want my book, it's free. You want the fundraising report card, it's free. You want the DAF widget, it's free. I'll give you other things for free if you want. And if you're interested in how our system can help you, please go to imarketsmart.com and request a demo. All right, thank you very much, everybody.